The jury is present, sir.
All right, very good. Thank you. Good morning. Day number 12? Day number 12. 11. Day number 11. You sure? 12. I said 12, yeah. Day number 12, state's case. No, 5 days in a week. 5. You may proceed, state's case.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. The state would call Jeannie Seckinger.
It's day 9 of testimony.
Your Honor, for the record, we renew our objection to this witness's question. And
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Good morning. Raise your right hand. Left hand on the belly. Do you affirm the testimony about to give the court in this trial shall be the truth, so help you God? I do. State your name again for the record. When you take the seat, spell your last name, please.
My name is Jeannie Seckinger, Seckinger.
Ms. Seckinger, how are you doing today?
I'm good.
Awesome. Tell the jury a little bit about yourself. If you could, just kind of introduce yourself. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school, if you would?
I grew up in Hampton, South Carolina, graduated from Wade Hampton, went to the University of South Carolina where I got my BS in accounting. After that, I worked a number of years in public accounting. Then I transferred into as a financial analyst with Westinghouse in Hampton. And after the birth of my second child, I stayed home and worked for my husband just a few years. And in 1999, I came to work with the firm on a part-time basis, doing some special projects, and have not left. And that job has grown since that time till I was over all the business aspects and financial aspects of the law firm.
All right. Which law firm are you talking about?
Peters, Murdaugh, Parker, Elsdorf, Dietrich.
Is that PMPED?
That's correct.
Is that what the firm is currently known, or is it known by a different name?
We are now a separate entity that we've reorganized as Parker Law Group, LLP.
All right. And do you know the defendant, Alex Murdaugh, over there?
I do.
Do you see him in the courtroom?
I do.
Can you identify him, please?
He's in the blue jacket and white shirt sitting between Jim and Dick.
Your Honor, can the record reflect she's identified the defendant?
Yes.
Was he a partner in the law firm you're speaking of?
He was.
Is he a partner anymore?
No,
And we're going to talk about some of those things, the reasons for that here today. Is that correct?
that's correct.
All right, so I'm going to call it PMPED, what we're talking about. Is that fair?
That's fair.
All right, well, tell me, you talked a little bit about your role in PMPED. What would you consider your role, or how would you define your role, particularly as we're moving into June of 2021?
At that point, I would be CFO/COO, basically overall office management and all financial affairs of the office, over hiring and firing, HR, just any, like I said, any business aspect of the firm.
So CFO, that means what?
Chief Financial Officer,
And COO, that means what?
Chief Operating Officer. And so I kind of combine those jobs.
Are you a lawyer?
I am not.
Or are you an accountant?
I am.
Do you have a CPA?
I do.
You said you started working for the firm when?
August of '99.
And then when did, was Alec working there at that time, the defendant?
I think Alec came to work the year after me.
Okay. Did you know him prior to that?
I did. I've known Alec since I was 16 years old in high school.
Y'all went to high school together?
We did. He's a few years behind me, but we were in the same school.
And you worked with Alec at the law firm up until September of 2021?
I did.
Let's talk a little bit, if we could, about the law firm itself. And tell me a little bit about the financial structure of the law firm. How does it work that fees come into the law firm, and how do they get dispersed at the end of the year? Can you explain that to the jury a little bit?
Yes. So every fee that any attorney makes is property of the law firm. It comes into the law firm and goes into the law firm's accounts, and it is sitting in kind of what we call a holding account that we just amass the money. We have another account called the operating account that we use to pay the daily bills of the law firm, wages, insurance, office supplies, etc. Each attorney in the law firm is also an employee of the law firm. They receive a paycheck just like most people do, with W-2 taxes taken out and W-2 at the end of the year. When we get to the end of the year, we figure the net profit of the law firm, basically everything brought in and everything paid out to date. And we distribute that money based off a ratio of what that attorney brought in to total. So if an attorney brought in 10%, he's going to get roughly 10% of the net income at the end of the year. And we do that in a form of a bonus one time at the end of the year.
When is that bonus typically paid?
That bonus is typically paid the last week of December every year.
And is that for most cases and most of the partners, as we're going to call them in the law firm, is that the vast majority of their compensation of the year, is getting it all in one lump sum at the end of the year in December?
That's correct. They receive a salary of $125 through the year that they're paid every 2 weeks, but the vast majority of their money comes in that one bonus check.
Okay. Now, you mentioned there was a salary. Looking back in June of 2021, what were the partners in the law firm, what were they getting as a salary?
$125,000 a year.
All right, $125,000, and that was broken up into checks like people were
26
used
times
to.
a year, yes.
Okay. And then, so that has to be accounted for before the bonuses are paid, correct?
That's correct.
Salaries not only for the partners, but also for all the other employees.
That's correct, all staff.
All right, and is there other overhead that has to be accounted for out of the fees before that bonus can be paid?
Yes, all the other overhead is the basic operating expenditures like I discussed: rent for the building, insurance coverage for the employees, office supplies, case costs that we advance for our clients. We pay things as we go during the case. We pay experts, record fees. All of that is part of overhead. So after everything that's paid, everything brought in, after everything that's paid out is what we call that net income that we distribute.
Is there some sort of 7.5% fund or offset that has to be accounted for as well before the bonus is paid?
There is. We have what we call 7.5% kind of profit sharing, and everybody takes their gross fees less their portion of overhead. We take overhead and divide it by the number of partners. And so you would take, let's just use numbers. If your gross fees were $100,000 and your overhead was $50,000, you have a net of $50,000. And we take 7.5% of that and put it in a pot and divide it back evenly in between everybody. And that purpose is meant to cover when somebody has a high year or a low year. It kind of helps people out and it helps account for differences and expenses between each attorney.
So all of that has to be taken care of before the bonus is paid out to the partners at the end of the year, is that correct?
That's correct.
And then whatever money is left over is divided up based on the percentage of the fees that particular partner brought in of the whole for the year, is that correct?
That's correct.
So if you had a better year, you're going to get a little bit more than somebody who didn't have as good a year.
Absolutely.
Okay. Over time, being the CFO, did Alex Murdaugh have a very lucrative practice?
He did.
Were there times where his bonus was high six figures?
Definitely.
Were there times his bonus was seven figures?
There has been.
And was it typical for the vast majority of his compensation to be in that one-time bonus at the end of the year as opposed to the $125,000 salary?
Yes, his and everybody else's. That
$125,000 salary for these individuals was a fairly small part of the compensation.
Correct.
Now, one of the things that you mentioned is that at the very beginning, as you said, all fees belong to the firm. Is that right?
That is right.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 310 to your testimony real quick and see if you can recognize this particular document.
I do. This is the employment agreement that each of the attorneys in the firm sign.
All right. Take that back real quick. Can I have the Elmo, please? I would offer 310 at this time in evidence.
No additional objections, Your Honor.
It's admitted.
Let me let this Elmo boot up real quick. I guess let's try it again. is this Exhibit 310, is this the first page of that agreement?
Yes,
All right, and on your little screen up there, can you read that all right?
yes.
Okay. If we look at it's talking about employer and employees, now we've been talking about the law firm partners, but in the agreement, what are they referred to as?
They're actually shareholders, so we refer to them as partners in the fact that they all work together and support each other. But because of the type of tax entity we are, they're shareholders. It's just a legal and accounting determination. But in fact, you'll see them referred to as shareholders.
All right, but in this agreement, they're called employees, correct?
That's correct.
Now, just real quick, you talked about paying out the bonus at the end of the year, and that's where the vast majority of compensation for the partners goes out. Is there a tax reason for that? Do y'all clear the books at the end of the year?
We do clear the books at the end of the year. We function as a C corporation, which means any money that's left in that C corporation would pay a tax too. So to avoid double taxation, we pass that money down to the partners to the best of our ability.
All right, and so do you try to zero out the books?
We do.
All right, and that's to avoid taxing on anything that remained in the firm accounts?
Correct.
So let me ask you this. If the firm essentially zeroes out the books by paying these bonuses to all the partners at the end of the year, how do you operate in the few, January and February where we're at now before fees start to come in? What money do you use to do that?
So typically, a group of partners will go in and loan money back to the firm to cover our first couple months of operating expenses. And as we recover money through the year, we'll pay them back and pay them off. So we're basically starting at almost a negative by borrowing that money.
All right, and so some of the partners will loan money to the firm to operate until there's enough fees that come in to generate enough money. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do the partners have to do that, or is that something they can do if they want?
That's something that they can do if they want.
Was Alec one to ever do that?
Alec never did that.
He never did that. Okay. Before we go on back to this agreement, let me ask you a little bit. As far as the firm accounts, you mentioned there's an operating account, correct?
That's correct.
And then there's a client trust account, correct?
That's correct.
Trust account.
Trust account.
Tell me what the client trust account is, please.
So the trust account is a fiduciary account, meaning that we have the responsibility to maintain and safeguard that money. It's where the account, whenever a case settles, that the money that is paid from the insurance company or individual from the defendant is put into that client trust account. And that is also where the money is dispersed out to any clients or any lien holders or anything to do with that disbursement. And it's also where we collect our fees and expenses from.
And are there legal obligations and money in the client trust account to ensure that that money only goes to the legitimate places it's supposed to go?
That's correct.
And if the law firm wins a case, whether by settlement or by trial, any recovery they get, does it go in that trust account first before the law firm gets paid?
Everything does, yes.
Now, I'm going to go back to exhibits, the employment agreement, I believe is exhibit 310. And right here in line 3 right there, can you read that to the jury, please?
Services for the benefit of employer. All professional services rendered by the employee shall be rendered as an employee of the employer, and all proceeds and remuneration received therefore shall inure to the employer's benefit.
All right, and this is the agreement signed by all the partners, correct?
Correct.
And back in 2021, it was signed by Alex Murdaugh, correct?
Correct.
And all the years prior, correct?
Correct.
And what does that provision mean? Explain that again to the jury.
That means that any work they do providing legal services and any money earned by them belongs to the law firm, not the partner to the law firm, and should run through the law firm's books
It
and
has to go through
accounts.
the law firm's books before it can.
Right.
And then they have to wait till the end of the year for it to be accounted for after paying all the overhead and the salary and the 7.5 and all the rest of it.
That's correct.
If a law partner were to divert fees to himself personally and not send them to the law firm, what would that be?
Stealing?
Stealing. Okay. All right. Tell me a little bit, if you would, about the management structure of the law firm. How does it work? Just very quickly.
So each attorney, apparently, they all, I can't even speak. They all have equal authority and equal choice. But basically, we'll have a little committee each year that we can go to with day-to-day issues and make some basic decisions that are then gone on and voted by the whole firm. I report directly to each and every attorney. So I would handle day-to-day obligations within certain authorities, and if I had an issue, then I would go to this committee or somebody who is present, because a lot of times attorneys are out of the building traveling in hard, and it would kind of go up the rank from there.
Okay. Was Alec very involved in the actual management of the firm?
No.
Were other partners more involved in the management of the firm?
Yes.
Tell me, what was your observation of Alec as a lawyer in the office? What was your observations and characterization?
Alec kept different hours than a lot of the rest of us. He came in and he would work late. Always loud, always busy, always in a rush. He had the gift of gab, but he always seemed last minute and hurried and frenetic.
Okay. Always last minute and frenetic?
Yes,
What about his cell phone use? How was he with the cell phone?
constantly on the phone.
Constantly on the phone. What were your observations of him as a lawyer?
I think Alec was successful more not from his work ethic, but from his ability to establish relationships and to manipulate people into settlements and clients into liking him. So he did it through the art of bullshit, basically.
That can be an art. Did he, in your estimation, in your judgment, was he more of a technical type lawyer, or was he one that really understood how to use the emotion of a case?
He would use the emotion of a case and the emotion of his clients.
Did he understand the emotional value that the sympathies of a case could have?
I would.
Your Honor, he's asked her to testify as what he understands, what's in his mind. I object.
Let's sustain the objection.
With Alex, your observations of Alec as a lawyer, what skills did you see in how he was able to value a case?
I would think that he was able to read the client. And it seemed he always got higher settlements than it looks like they should appear, going back when we've reviewed everything. So I think that he used his personality more than technical skill. I think that, we look back and we see things that were manipulated and set up, and I believe he did that a lot with his clients as well.
You mentioned, did Alec get good results? Did the defendant get good results?
It appeared that they usually did, yes.
Were they very lucrative results?
Yes.
Did you have any observations in working with Alec for 20-some odd years about his memory?
I think that looking back, where I thought he was chaotic and didn't remember things or kind of got bored with details sometimes and wouldn't finish things off, I really think looking back, as we've gone back and pieced together a lot of this, that we saw where he would tell people one thing and another person another. So in my opinion, looking back, I think he had almost a photographic memory, to keep all the balls in the air that we now saw were in the air. It appears that he would have to have a really strong memory.
Stand by for me real quick. You had mentioned before that for the firm to operate at the beginning of the year after it cleared its books, that it would loan from, or take loans from partners at their option in order to sort of give some seed money until fees started to roll in. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 428 to your testimony, and just have you take a look at that and ask if you recognize those documents as it relates to a particular instance involving the defendant.
I do.
All right, and tell me about this instance. What happened here, please?
Okay, so this is in 2017, a check for the payment got mistakenly written to R. Alexander Murdaugh instead of his brother Randolph Murdaugh. So the loan payoff was written to Alec.
All right, let me slow you down. So does his brother work for the law firm?
His brother does work for the law firm.
And what name does he go by?
He goes by Randy Murdaugh. His legal name is Randolph Murdaugh IV.
Had Randy Murdaugh loaned money to the law firm?
He did.
Had Alec Murdaugh loaned all?
No.
All right, and so what happened then?
So, as we said, we had the clerical error. And a few days later, Alec came to our staff, and it's not quite clear which staff because our records don't show that, but a voided check, he acted as if he'd lost this original check and had another check written. So a replacement check was then written to Alec again, which was a mistake again.
Did that second check get cashed?
The second check got cashed pretty much immediately within a week or two. And then about a year later, the first check got cashed as well. And that's when I caught in the system that he had cashed both checks. And looking back, I realized that the mistake had been made, that somebody had hit, their names are right beside each other in the vendor list, and that they had made a clerical mistake, and that he was paid money that he was not owed.
All right. Ultimately, did he get that money twice that he was not supposed to have received?
He did,
And ultimately, was it because he claimed that he had lost the first check?
correct.
Ultimately, did he cash both checks?
He did,
And cash the original one a year later, is that correct?
correct.
All right. Was he confronted about this back at that time when it was detected, I guess, in 2017? Is that right?
He was.
And he was confronted at that time?
He was not, I don't remember that he was confronted by me. I know that Danny Henderson spoke with him about it, and Alec just claimed that he made a mistake and thought that he had paid the money, that he had loaned the money that year, and Danny chose to kind of let it go and sweep it under the rug.
Did he pay it back at that point?
He did pay it back.
All right, so that happened, and the explanation was given, and then he was allowed to pay it back. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And everybody moved on, right?
That's correct. I have to point out that it was, these attorneys worked as a brotherhood and were very family, and they trusted him and accepted the explanation.
What was that word you just used? You said it was a brotherhood?
Yes.
And so when the attorneys are dealing with one another, when the attorneys are dealing with you, how are y'all dealing with one another? What's the basis of that?
Trust.
Trust? And so over the years, when Alex Murdaugh would tell you to do a transaction or anything like that, what were you relying on?
His word and trust.
Are you generally familiar with what's been known as the boat case?
Yes,
All right. And do you remember that occurring around in February 2019?
I do.
All right. And again, I'm not, without going into the specifics of the boat case, what was your general understanding of the boat case? Well, let me ask you this. Was his son Paul charged with driving the boat in the boat case, to your knowledge?
Yes.
And was Alex Murdaugh sued civilly in the boat case because of the death of Mallory Beach?
Yes.
After the boat case, did you notice any changes in Alex's behavior or his demeanor around the office?
I can't say that I really did up until November, December of late 20.
Okay, and what'd you notice then?
Didn't really notice it then. And we can go back and notice it now. That's when he started making some disbursements that he was stealing from that started getting sloppy. So the things that I noticed are more in hindsight.
And I put this exhibit up on the screen. Let me get ahead of myself. This is exhibit 428, which I'd offer in evidence.
No additional objection, Chairman.
All right.
Say admit it without objection.
428, this is this is the loan check you were talking about, is that right?
That's right.
This is where Alex erroneously received a check meant for his brother Randy,
That's right.
and then ultimately managed to get the same amount twice, is that correct?
That's right.
All right, and how much was that check for? I can bring it to you if you need to see it.
Yeah, you're going to have to.
Yeah, I'll bring it to you. Screen over here is bigger than that.
It was for $121,358.63.
$121,000, correct?
That's correct.
When he received the check, did Alex say, "No, this isn't my $121,000 check"?
No, he didn't.
Now, you mentioned, you started to talk about some things you noticed in late of 2020, and let's just set the table a little bit more before we do that. You mentioned disbursements. Tell the jury, before we see some paperwork, tell the jury how disbursements go about. Is there certain paperwork that's done, and how do the lawyers interface with the finance stuff for that to be accomplished?
Okay, so a disbursement after a case is won, or what we call settled, the money comes into the client trust, just like I talked about. A disbursement will recap how much money was won, how much attorney fees, how much expenses were withheld or earned for our firm in that, and then it will list any loans or liens that need to be paid off. And what I mean by that is like medical liens, medical bills, insurance companies getting their money back for items that they paid, and then it will show the balance that goes to the client.
And so then how do they interface with the finance staff? What does the finance staff do as opposed to when the attorneys prepare those disbursement forms?
It comes over to our finance department. We have the supporting documentation with it, and we will process the checks based off the attorney's signature. Those then go back to the attorneys that handled the case or the paralegals that handled the case. They meet with the client and explain the disbursement to them and give them the funds.
Okay. Is the finance staff relying on what the lawyers are sending them to determine what checks should be cut?
Yes.
All right.
With support.
With support.
Yes.
Ultimately, are they trusting the attorneys to provide them the correct information?
We are.
All right, so you mentioned that something that happened in late 2020 that was the first things that you started to notice in the wake of the boating case that was a little different. And tell the jury what you were about to talk about.
As I said, in late 2020, I really didn't notice it at that point. But some of these items that we're going to discuss started happening at that point. My discovery of things started coming to a head in May of 21.
In May of 2021.
Yes.
All right, and tell me what was the first thing that came to your attention?
Because one thing that came to attention was a disbursement that the fees were made out and processed to Forge Consulting. And what that meant is that the fees weren't going into our personal account like they should. They weren't going to the firm. Forge Consulting is a true company that you can do structures of attorney fees, but the way that this was done was not correct. To do a correct structure,
Let me slow you down so we can unpack this a little
Okay.
bit. All right. Let's first talk about what is a structure. What is a structure? What does that mean?
So a structure means that you can set up a fee in the agreement with the insurance company that you can put that money into an annuity that you'll get it out later. You can avoid taxes now and take them out when you're 65 or whatever year you determine. So it's a way that they can defer income for retirement. If they're having a good year, they can do that.
So maybe an explanation would be kind of like the lottery. You can either get your settlement in one lump sum or you can get it paid over time, correct?
Correct.
All right. And so this is what a structure is getting it paid over time.
Correct.
And are there tax benefits associated with doing a structure?
They would avoid taxes at the year that they made the fee, and they would pay the taxes when they got it out, similar to your retirement 401k.
And is it sometimes common for plaintiffs' lawyers, lawyers who get recoveries for clients, to have their clients get the settlement in a structure as opposed to getting it in all one lump sum so that there's some security over time with that money?
It is definitely a vehicle that can be used by plaintiffs' lawyers. We don't do it very often in our firm, and when it is done, it has to be, every partner needs to know about it and needs to be agreed upon, because obviously that money's not coming into the firm to help with overhead and expenses. So we have to agree on it, and we have to account for it in our allocations at the end of the year to determine bonuses that we're going to pay out.
Sure, but I'm talking about with clients right now. So clients that receive a settlement, they can
Okay.
elect to either get it in one lump sum, or they can get a structured annuity over time where they get it however much a year for the however many years it goes, correct?
Yes, that's true too.
Kind of like the lottery, you can get the whole big thing but with taxes, or you can get a bigger sum over time, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And so some clients might choose to get it over time so that their money is more secure over a longer time, correct?
Correct, and you generally see that when it's a minor involved or somebody with special needs that has a disability of some sort.
And so what is Forge Consulting, the legitimate business Forge Consulting? What do they do?
They set up structured annuities for clients like we're talking about. They do special needs trusts for people who are injured or are going to need life care plans, and they handle that kind of, they have a few other things that they do, but I'm not familiar as much with those services.
Have they provided services over the years, the legitimate company, Forge Consulting, legitimate services to the law firm and its clients over the years in helping them set up structured settlements?
We do, we've used them 250 to 300 times.
And who's kind of like the main guy at Forge Consulting, the legitimate business?
Michael Gunn.
All right. Now, you mentioned that we're not talking now about the client structuring their settlements, but what if a lawyer wins a big case and wants to, so he's going to get a huge fee. Now, let me ask you this first. Generally, what is the legal fees for the firm when they win a case, whether by settlement or by trial?
Generally, they're 33% to 40%, and it depends on what stage the case was in or the work we had to do. So if we settle a case before we have to start doing summons and complaints and depositions or going to trial, we take 33.33%. If it goes further, we do 40%, and it can go to 45% if it's on an appeal. But generally speaking, it's between a third and 40%.